G'day everybody. Alright, it's another one of the things. And just wanted to say thanks for all the support to whoever is watching just right at this beginning. Hoping to get maybe 50 subscribers, 3 off. And it also updated all the channel's visuals, which is kind of cool. I think it looks nice. Alright, let's get straight into it. So we've got calcium 3D, or Oleum 3D. Golden Goats. Spent a little time playing with lighting and thought I'd post my favorite results. Alright, let's have a look. So we got our first one here. Yeah, the lighting is very interesting. It's very good. So I'm going to assume that you made this model too. It's quite a nice model. But let's focus more on the lighting. So I would say that you might need a slightly higher resolution light, like just because of the graininess, and then or also considering the use of anti-aliasing to smooth this stuff out. I would be looking into adding a bit of bloom as well, just to make that light pop. In terms of composition, either I would move these skulls just a little bit closer together to give a bit more room up the top here. Down the bottom is really nice. I like the addition of reflection as well on the ground. With the colouring, the colouring's interesting. I would say that, like, I do like the light parts, but these strips here tend to blend in with the horns a little bit and break up their silhouette a bit too much. I'd just be exploring maybe just slightly different colour choices there, just by going through, say, even like on GIMP or Photoshop with the hue and saturation, just changing that hue just to see and check. You can even go in and choose if it's just yellow to just check, so that you could go and like just change the colors in the background. And maybe also consider adding a vignette around the edges here, just to make it closed in a little bit more. But yeah, in terms of the thing that's really popping out at me the most is the composition of just giving a bit more room up the top here. And then just obviously the graininess and exploring the different colouring and stuff that you've got going on too. And then for this second one, it's quite like underexposed. So I would just lighten it up a little bit, give it a bit more contrast, just going maybe in with curves and just like heightening it a little bit more. Just so then maybe even adding some reflection a bit more on the skulls, so then we can have a bit more highlights and stuff in there too. I would also maybe, for you, if you're exploring into lighting, look into a 3-point lighting setup, but also just exploring use of 2 lights from 2 different angles and of 2 different colors, just so then you can show the model a bit more and make it look a bit more 3D. This one's composed, I would say, a whole lot more. It feels a lot more balanced. And I do like the background use and the way it really draws your eye in, but I feel like it's just a little bit underexposed for this picture. And it could add, like, you could use just one other color, maybe like a purple or a blue, or even a yellow, depending on which direction you want to go with this, just to add a little bit more to it. There you go, I hope that helps. Alright, we've got Malkai21, work in progress. Hello guys, I'm working on this model. What do you think about this model? Alright, let's have a look. So then we've got the front on and then the side. So in terms of design, I really like the use of weight and the type of silhouette that the character has. Just trying to be aware of that silhouette. You could maybe add just a little bit more of a lump around on this side here, just to emphasize those, like, I think they're traps. Adding to that, just making the character a bit less symmetrical, because even if you add like one cheek or one eyebrow to just be a little bit thicker, maybe the grin to be slightly off, especially because he's like maybe a grizzly character or something, it'll make it more interesting but also more realistic and lifelike. And in terms of textures and stuff, like, I know that this is work in progress, but yeah, just considering maybe a small bump or a normal map, just to add a bit more detail into his skin. I would say that this has a little bit of a normal map already, but yeah, just thinking about those little extra details like veins and pores on the skin or scars, And yeah, and just I would cut under the pec a little bit more, because I would say that, like, yeah, as much as he's quite strong and stuff in areas, it just could look better just to be a bit more cut, and then having the sort of lines of the muscle going across the chest. So I'd be looking at reference material of bodybuilders and stuff, and it might not be that you actually use the reference material, but I'd rather you actively choose not to than blindly not to choose using it. And the horns seem pretty good. I would just like look into smoothing out some of these areas, so it's probably just adding a few more polygons and stuff in here, or looking into the smoothing settings. In terms of lighting as well, I'd be using just slightly colored light just to give the character a bit more life. Also looking into 3-point lighting, so we have the key light, which will light up, say, this side of his face, and it'll be slightly higher up, and then we'll use a fill light just to fill in those extra areas down there, maybe at a slightly different color, usually about half intensity. And then we'd have a brighter light behind him that would be shining on a slight angle, very bright, so that we can get this sort of look around here. And yeah, and like then I think that'll make it pop out a whole lot more. I do like the color choices, but I think you might want to also just, yeah, like you've done with the chest, add a little bit more splotches. So one technique that people do when they color in, say, a human's face, is they'll paint it all like a slight yellow, which would be for the bones, and then everywhere that there'd be some meat, so say you'd paint my head light yellow, and then paint in red all the areas that would contain blood, and so then you can add all extra details and stuff in, but this is a really quick, simple way. And then you'd have this sort of skull-like thing with all the muscles painted on, and then you would just use a slight fill with really low opacity of like a skin color. And then if you do it, you'll have to experiment with it a little bit, but it'll make the red and the yellow shine through that skin. It's a really quick way to color the picture, or like the 3D model. And then yeah, I would go through and add some texturing really on the horns, as well as on these teeth. I would make them separate pieces too, especially if later on you get into animating, because at the moment they do look connected. And think too about, if you were to animate this sort of section up here, as much as it looks like it's grinning, you might just want to think about the polygon flow and stuff, like the topology, just to be able to open and close that eye a little bit more easily. But really it's hard to know the character and how it's going to move, and what this sort of does. Checking in, let's check that back image. Yeah, so I don't know why, maybe you were doing some post editing or something, but there's just that little blue dot there. Just check into that. That's not me. Hopefully that helps. All right, so we've got McGee. My first render after my donut, of course. Any tips for better lighting and or composition? All right. So in terms of lighting, it looks like you've got maybe how many lights would you have? You've got one major light, it seems, and it's a white light. I would give that light a bit more color. Look into adding a secondary light from another angle, maybe even a third or a fourth, especially of different colors, just so then you can get a nicer range of shadows as well as highlights. I'd look into adding a bit more bloom so that they shine a bit more. And then I do like your use of depth of field and the like translucency. I forget what it's called, how it shines through. Someone can probably let me know. I do like the objects that you have. So I think that the background color might be able to be adjusted, as well as the ground, once you're a bit more comfortable with the scene. But I think that your first two choices for making this shot should be the floor and the background. So maybe adding like even a slight dark black, like not perfectly black but really dark, and then maybe adding like this is like maybe a creamy sort of color. to make it look a little bit more natural and stuff. And with this texture, maybe like unstretch it just so it's a bit more in proportion with everything and look more natural, as well as adding a bit more reflection on the ground, just really subtly, so then we can have, when things are closer, we can have a bit more of a sense of dimension. Because see, this piece here, I can see that it's shadows down here, but I sort of also feel like it should be here. So like adding those reflections will really give a bit more of a sense of scale and dimension. Now, in terms of composition, the first thing you'd want to look at is this line here, the background line. So first thing I would probably do is just like, unless you have a high intention to have it on an angle, flatten it out first, just to experiment with a more like traditional composition, right? And so if you want it to look like they're spraying out everywhere, I'd be thinking of the thirds first, the rule of thirds, to have like a major piece in one of those. So I would assume that it's going to be this red ball here, and then just hinting at the other ones by having curves and stuff. So I like, it's hard to explain. Like, you want to have, when you look at it, right, you relax your eyes and see where your eye is drawn to first. So for me, it's drawn to the red circle. And then when you're looking at that red circle, see what it's drawn to next. Now, I've got a few different areas. So first thing maybe is this green here. And then we've got the blue and the red over here, and then it goes up. Now, I want it to maybe be choosing to go over here a bit more, but I want it to be quite direct, as if it's like, kind of like the circle, but like a spray of the circle, like a spray of objects. So I'd put an object over here, like say this blue guy, place it over here, and then build around it. So there's an idea in art where you have a big object, and then you have smaller objects sort of surrounding it. Think it like how you would see in architecture, or how they might put bushes around the bottom of the house, or when people are placing like vases, they'll have 3 of different heights. And that sort of either valley or mountain, in my eyes, is how you should balance a picture. So say we'd have this this like big planet sort of here, and then it's going to have a bit of like a semicircle shape going around it. And now you don't want to unbalance it too much by putting just random pieces anywhere. You want to really precisely place something down and see how it fits. So, because what can happen is if you do it where you just place everything in there and then try and fix it up as you're going, it can be really hard to know what to change. The best thing I would say is put things in slowly, trying to keep the picture balanced as you go. And so that means that you can start off really simply and then slowly build detail. Once you get good at that, then you'll be able to like throw things in knowing how they're going to heavily affect things. Because I want you to be aware of 2 major things: how when you put something in, it can heavily affect the image, and when you put something in, it can really subtly affect the image to the point where it adds nothing really. You need to know that range, and then once you know and can feel it in your eyes, you'll be smashing composition, no worries. So I'm not going to talk too much more about your stuff, but yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. Hopefully that really helps. All right, and then we've got Perry Apsis Studios, more Chiron renders. I don't really know cars, so it's just a car to me. Okay, let's look at the first one you put up. So love the use of bloom. Obviously, it's a very beautiful model. I like the sort of motion blur that you've got going on here. The one thing I would say first is lighting, because composition you're quite good in with this, I would say. And the first thing is that like this hood really hides into that black part. So I would consider maybe just either adjusting the lighting or adding in a secondary light to balance it out. And as well, not using a white light, where I think this isn't a pure white light, but trying to have a sort of slightly colored light to hit on the car, just to make it tie in with the image as a whole a little bit more. But yeah, like I would say that that's honestly just like brightening up the scene, brightening it up, and then making that hood stand out from the background a little bit more is really going to improve this image. Maybe adding just like a bit more of a reflection on the ground, but that's sort of up to you and your eyes. And then, okay, so with this one, you've got the HDRI, which is really adding some detail and stuff into the reflections. But I would say that use a picture in the background rather than the HDRI, just because they tend to be so big. It tends to be really low resolution. And I think that will help solve the problem of it not being hiding into the background too much, especially once you have a bit more choice about what you're putting in. I would also consider how some of these lights in the buildings in the background would be hitting onto the car. So using maybe a yellow light placed nicely just to really show the curves of the car a bit more. Especially like, say, even like a red light somewhere, or like just another colored light as if it's in a flashy city, but to use so then you can light up this grille and the wheels just a little bit more. And so this one sort of is having the complete opposite effect, where it's overexposed. So either drop down the use of the major light in the scene if you have one, or drop down the HDRI like exposure a bit more, and again using an image in the background rather than the HDRI. So if you like, I would say that you're more just wanting to model the cars rather than the background, but you can look into maybe even modeling a basic garage with some interesting lights and stuff in there too. It'll just make the scene maybe connect more in terms of detail, and then you can use that heaps in the future too if you wanted to. If you just wanted to present the cars, make like say 2 or 3 really nice garages and then just have them in your back pocket. Or you could probably just download some free asset garages and stuff too. But in terms of modeling the car, like honestly, it's really good. I haven't had a proper look at your model up close yet, but you know, like the terms of flow and stuff, and like the way things are reflected, it's just awesome. Wish I could have it, you know. But yeah, it's mostly, I would say, just lighting. Like even this even though it's got the black, it just feels slightly overexposed and with quite a white light. Even just adding just a bit more yellow or something to it, or blue even, like exploring with the different colors of lights just to be aware and make more conscious decisions about why you're doing what you're doing will really help your renders. And I do really love this shot. Like I love the angle and the composition. Your composition is really nice. Like for other people watching this, how usually I would say like add a bit of breathing room around the car or whatever, you've really dipped it in just enough that it's given a nice balance and like transition where you've cut off the unnecessary stuff, and now your focus is actually the inside of the car as well as maybe this wheel here. So you've done a really good job with composition. But yeah, again, it's just maybe slightly overexposed. You can go into like Photoshop or something and just adjust the colors slightly. Like this contrast seems to be good. It's more just the whites are a bit too white. Like I don't know. That's all I've really got to say. But overall, it's a really good one. So thanks. Hopefully that helps. We got BG Herka, wooden cabin interior for my video game. Alright, video game. Hope it goes well. Okay, so first things first, I I would just say to add a light where there needs to be. It seems like there's, if I look at the other shots, there's kind of like no real reason for a light in wherever it is in here. So I would consider so I do a lot of fantasy 3D stuff. Consider lighting these up and then using say 1 point light or 2 or 3 point lights to light up the scene, or an area light, and then maybe having some candles and stuff around too. Maybe even some cracks through the window or something like that, just to give your lighting a little bit more context. Maybe even a torch or something, depending on what type of room this is, and how it's used. And I know that you're probably really aware of the amount of polygons and stuff that are used. I would consider though how, if you are going to texture and use normal maps, depending on where you're putting this, if it's on mobile it's a little bit different, but yeah, just looking into and making conscious decisions about textures, and maybe adding just a little bit more variation possibly with these here. I know you've got some variation, but yeah, they may be just a little bit too similar, making some have major notches in it so they can catch the light a little bit differently. And if it was made in a cabin, if it was actually done, there'd be probably no room to see through here. So I feel like I can see through the slots, which isn't good. If I was living in that cabin, I wouldn't want that. And yeah, so I'm going to assume that because it's low poly, let's pretend that it's on mobile. So now we have to really be careful of the amount of details and stuff that we have. So I would be considering, even if you can't use point lights, using a directional light, and then maybe just 1 point light that's maybe just in the middle of the room, highlighting everything with a low resolution shadow on it, and then maybe having the windows open so there's directional light, that directional light can shine through, just so that we can have some shadows and stuff in here. And I would yeah, I would consider maybe just the placement of objects a little bit more, because it depends on what type of game you're going for and where you want things to go. But I would say that this tipped over tankard would be placed upwards unless someone was running out really quickly. And I can see that this chair's run over too, so I would assume that someone's leaving quite quickly, maybe to the point where they would leave that door open, but it's hard to say because of the type of game it is. These are just things that I'm thinking that I hope you do consider when you're putting this stuff together, rather than it just being aesthetic, because if it reads well in terms of context, people will believe it more and they can be more immersed. But when they're questioning about those little things, maybe even in their subconscious, it's going to draw them out of the game a little bit more, or out of the scene. And I would hope that you want full immersion in this game. I would also look into colouring choices too for your pieces. Just giving it a bit more variation in terms of, say, the floorboards, because there's something here but then they're not over here. And I would say that also, though, this comes down to lighting, because the ground should probably be a bit more lit than the roof, just so that we can have a bit more attention to what's going on, as players will probably tend to look down a little bit more in this game than up in the ceilings. But yeah, honestly, overall great amount of models. You're very aware of the low poly sort of look, and yeah, hopefully you can just apply some of those things that I've said, or think about it at least. Alright, and we've got Neo Steinhoff fluid simulation. This is the first time I've seen this, so let's have a look. 9 seconds. Alright, interesting. So, first thing I would say is looking into lighting just a little bit more. So maybe adding a colored light or 2 colored lights just to give it a bit more form and shape, especially to the cubes. I'd be looking into the camera angle too as well. Like, I do like the slight off angle of this cube, but making this cube on a slight angle so we can see at least 3 of the faces. Excuse me, I'm gonna sneeze. No, okay, that's silly. I would probably, if you can, up the resolution of the water, or the fluid, just to give it a bit more detail, and looking at how it sticks to the walls and stuff a little bit more. Just be looking into the different settings and stuff for that, as well as possibly changing the floor to a bit more of a color, or even adding in a HDRI into the picture, which I'm not sure. I don't think you have one in there. Maybe you do, and I just can't tell. But yeah, it's just because then you might be able to show the color a little bit more. Yeah, overall, like, it's great for like a pretty basic sort of shot. You could add in a bit more color to the actual fluid, like giving it maybe a blue tint or a green tint or something, as well as adding maybe a bit more bloom into the lighting and everything too. And yeah, like, maybe in terms of composition, you could just move the whole piece slightly to the left or to the right, just to get it a little bit more off center, and it'll just be a little bit more interesting. But I would say that this is a bit more of an experiment and like a test, so I wouldn't be too harsh on yourself. I just thought I'd give you some little tips and advice or something for maybe the next piece to consider. But yeah, nice work. Alright, next one. We've got Anzini Design. Any critic on this scene? Natural lighting on glass staircase. Okay, the first thing I would say is composition would probably just cut that whole top bit off. Maybe even cut out this wall. It's not really doing much to the scene, and we want people to focus on this top bit, and this side is just really dragging my attention away. So yeah, even just something like that, and then cutting out the side a little bit so it's a bit more balanced, just makes it a lot more easier to look at, and it's not as distracting. And now for the glass staircase, I feel like this sort of shot, you're not actually showing the glass well. Like, I only know it's glass because you told me, but if you were to, like, say have a window or something behind this wall, then it's going to show all the shine and everything too coming through. Like, if you're wanting to make a glass staircase, think about how a designer would put this together. They'd make it like the feature of everything. Like, you've got all the black railings and stuff too, but see, they're more interesting at the moment than the glass stairs at this point, because they just stand out a whole lot more. So I would even maybe give these stairs color, like a slight blue, or I don't know, green or something, just to make it look like it was made out of gems or something. And then I would consider how you're coloring the background to maybe emphasize the staircase glass a little bit more. And this standalone light, I feel like maybe you're still building this scene because it's quite bare. Like, I can imagine a little plant here, maybe some stuff under here too, but I would really just get rid of that because it's taking my attention away, or turn it on just to give it some function. but I feel like this idea of the staircase where all this area isn't being used, I feel like an architect probably wouldn't choose, or if they were a good architect, wouldn't choose to do this sort of stuff. Because the natural thing I'm thinking, if I was actually using this house, is I'd hide stuff under, or you'd store stuff under the staircase. Unless of course you're some rich guy or whatever, or whatever, and then you've got this beautiful staircase. But I just feel like you need to think a bit more about contextually, if you were trying to sell this staircase maybe to someone, making it obvious and thinking about its function as well inside of this home. And just maybe even using a HDRI to shine down a bit more of like natural colors, like bits of green or whatever, as if they were coming from trees, stuff like that. But in terms of modeling and stuff, I'm pretty happy with that. Like the texture on the railing could be adjusted slightly just to make it maybe just pure black, because I feel like it's starting to look like it's camo or something now. And it's just like, look, the idea is good, but yeah, I think you might need to think a bit more about your creative decisions with why you were doing what you're doing with this. But yeah, it's coming along, man. It's getting there. Alright, and then we've got Awkward Ad 7379. This is my first walk cycle animation. Please give some feedback to improve my animation. Alright, let's have a look. Okay, so thinking about that bump, how we've got quite a predominant one on the right leg. So I'd be trying to get the consistent bump, basically. That would be my first thing. Also just a slight, giving it a bit more attitude, like a bit more personality, by maybe having a slight wiggle, thinking of it leaning back slightly as if it's leaning from its belly, or maybe leaning forwards as if it's leaning from its head. And also, yeah, like thinking of its actual weight distribution, because when it's stepping forwards, you should record yourself walking, and not to be sounding weird, but record yourself probably naked to see all the details of your muscles and stuff moving, and like the dimensions of your hips and everything, because you might not be able to see it with all your pants and stuff. But or look in the mirror, that's probably better. Just to take record of the subtle movements, because at the moment, yes, it's a functional walk, it's got legs, it's moving forwards, but it doesn't have those details or that attitude or character yet. And just another point that I would make is, if I try and pause it to get the it just slightly goes through the floor. Now that's not a huge thing, but it's something to be aware of that you're doing, because I just want you to know that you are actively choosing to do that rather than it being by accident. And yeah, like that. So that's mostly just what I would say for this walk cycle. And look into different angles too, and different coloring of the lighting. So I'm talking more about the composition now. Is like having it maybe at a lower angle, or having it like from behind with the camera, and so that we can see it from a different angle. It just might make it a bit more interesting. As well as using 2 separate lights for coloring, or 3 lights, or 1 area light that's slightly colored, maybe with a light yellow or a light blue, just to give it a bit more warmth and energy, and possibly making this ground extend forever, so it actually looks like he's walking rather than just walking on a square. So that's the sort of stuff that I would say with that. But overall, yeah, it's really good. Like, I'm pretty bad at animating, so that's pretty nice. Alright, we've got environmental. I made Hernando and his sword. Feedback is appreciated. Well, you're gonna get it. Okay, so let's ignore Hernando for the moment. I feel like he isn't your best work just yet, and I don't want to give him too much feedback. I feel like let's just ignore that picture. Let's look at this one. I reckon you want more feedback on the sword. Okay, so first thing is just upping your resolution a bit for your lighting, because it's getting a bit too grainy. I would just up that up. A strange little shadow here. Now I don't actually know the sword, so that might be its design. Another thing I would say is just looking into the repeating of your textures, so making them maybe slightly bigger or customizing them so they don't look as repetitive. I do like the hilt, I think it's called a hilt, where you've added a bit more of a bevel on there just so it can capture the light a bit differently. And I do like this curve that you've got going on here. I think that you could again adjust the textures and maybe adjusting the color slightly, to maybe have it just a little bit more red, like just the slightest hint, so it's not as like banana yellow and a bit more like golden. And maybe in adjusting the bottom section to be a bit thinner, so that if we've got the hilt here, that the bottom section is a bit more thin, so that it goes down and like tapers in a little bit more, and it might look a bit more natural. And you can also add in, maybe if it's an older dagger, just a few little notches and stuff in here. Maybe some nice designs up in this section here that'll taper out, as well as a few more like maybe gems or notches and stuff in here. Like, I don't know the sword, but so I'm going to assume that you can take some creative liberties with it. I really do like this handle. I feel like you could maybe make it like just taper out the tiniest little bit more to make these lines look thicker, as if it's like they have a bit of thickness to them as it goes down. Possibly add some reflection and stuff to them. I like the lighting that you've got in this. Possibly just check into adding that major light, which I'm thinking is the the white light, is just adding a little bit of a color to it too. But I do like this this one that you've added in here to really try and show the like the filling that area. And I would say as well with composition too, don't just go right to the edge. Give it a bit of breathing room around the area. Like have, thumb length or whatever on that picture, so that it has a bit of that room all around the edge, especially if it's just a singular object in with no real background and stuff too. But yeah, like, it's going really good. I would just maybe look into slightly coloring the background to be less pure black, and maybe just making it a slight blue black. Also looking into how swords are made, so that you can be much more conscious of how thick this actual blade part is compared to the handle, and the stuff in terms of weight. If you haven't considered it yet, I would be getting a picture of a sword, putting it all out there, and then having that as like the background while you model. So you model the complete profile to it, and it can just help you get a better understanding of the shape of the swords, as well as like just trying to solve problems based on a background image of what you're trying to model. But yeah, like, overall it's really good. Like, hopefully you can think about the stuff that I said and implement it into your future pieces. It's nice work, good job. Alright, we got Gosoi, my first full body model that I've made. Also tried to make it cartoony. What do you think of it? Let's have a bit of a look. Okay, yeah, so it is a little bit cartoony. I can see with maybe like the cell shader style material that you've got. I do like the color choice that you've got. It's like that sort of meaty look. I would consider maybe adding a bit of bloom. I know that that might take away from the cartooniness, but it's worth maybe considering looking into, so you can consciously choose to not do it. In terms of like proportions, he's got quite the gap down there. So I'd be like maybe looking at some reference materials, especially for his, say, his thumb being quite large and stuff like that. So trying to look into realistic images so that then you can build up to that, and then choosing to either extend it or remove it, like how the old Roman or Greek sculptors would do, where they'd build up to make it perfectly human so they could extend it to be godlike. And it's things like adding in just the shoulder heights and the way that the pecs move, and the abdominal muscles and stuff, and where the hips are placed, so that then once you've got a human sort of shape, you can sculpt it and move it out and base it wherever you need. But yeah, no, I think it's really good. The face has got a really nice design. I like its asymmetry, and I really like the colors. I think you should try posing it in different ways too, just so that you can show off these feet and legs and everything. And in terms of composition too, you can definitely cut off these little extra pieces here that seem to just be taking away from the image a bit more. You can have it a bit more of like a portrait orientation for the page rather than landscape, just because I feel like with a tall person it's better to have a portrait style like image size. But yeah, no, great job. Hopefully that all helps. Thanks so much. We've got Olha Metro. First time using nodes. Okay. First thing I gotta say, love the resolution. Far out. Okay, so let's have a look. Great use of color with the lighting and everything. It's a really nice design. I would just consider using some depth of field to add a bit more of a variation between the changes of this, as well as considering adding bloom. Like I feel like, cause if you add depth of field, it'll have all this nice stuff in focus, and then it'll start to blur out in this background here too. I would also consider just adjusting the angle of the light to be maybe a little bit more front on, and then maybe you could consider adding a secondary light of the complementary color to fill in this area a little bit more, and also consider using a HDRI to get a few extra details. Be really particular about which one you choose, because that's going to make or break the image, and that also means that maybe you can drop the color of the ground here, or adjust the color a little bit more. I would just download a whole load of HDRIs, even make your own, and see, and just adjust them like through exposure and color and hue and saturation and all that, just to get a certain look that you want. I'd also maybe even consider adding 2 or 3 extra balls, even if they're just the same model with a slightly adjusted node, just so you can have a kind of lump of them there, like a little bundle. And thinking about how the lump would be in a sort of pyramid style shape. So you have the big one in the middle, and then a slightly smaller one to the side here, and then smaller ones around that smaller one. Just don't go too far out, and then unbalance the image. In terms of composition, yeah, if you were to change the light to be a bit more front on, then this shadow wouldn't be as predominant, and it'll probably make a bit more of a balanced image, just because this shadow is quite predominant at the moment. But yeah, honestly, it's all really good. Hopefully that stuff really helps you just consider a few more things with your picture. Nice. Alright, and then we've got Black Wizard. So arc viz practice cycles. Hi guys, just finished this render trying to aim that level of realism people are able to achieve. I'd really love feedback from you guys. Okay, let's have a look. So first thing I would say is this, it's just slightly overexposed. So I would just drop the intensity of the light slightly. I would color the light with either a slight yellow or a slight blue. I would say because this is in a daytime scene, that it should be a slight yellow. I would consider adding the lighting to come through that window rather than from our eyes, basically. Just because it'll drag us into the scene a bit more, especially if you can make it go through this screen too, and then capture maybe some yellows or something on this bookcase. I would up your resolution of your lights too, as they're starting to make splotchy looks. And in terms of composition, it's pretty good. Maybe I would just cut a slight amount off this side here, just to explore it, just to see how it looks. And color choices are really nice. I feel like there's a lot of really good natural colors. I would be adding a bit more clumpiness to these pillows, so they've got those nice creases, making them a bit more thicker and like plump rather than being quite squishy and flat. The plants are good. I would just consider about how you've been putting on the texture, maybe to add a bit more variation of like slight browns and darker greens and stuff in there. The pot's really nice with its higher reflection, and I do really like the model that you've got on these frames, especially like it might have just been the lower resolution, but how it's got like some little smears and stuff on the window screen. And yeah, this is modeled really nicely, but I think also consider about how probably on a normal screen there would be like a little weighted bump right at the bottom there. So I'd be researching how these screens, I forget if they have an actual name, they're not drapes, you know what I mean, Venetian, no, it's not that. But anyway, yeah, studying those sort of things, as well as how this is hooking down and then it would have like, it would be going back up again. So just checking on those little things there. It's all about making sure that it actually would work as if it was in like an actual house. For this, that's pretty good. Honestly, like I'm pretty happy with that clock. Bookcase is good, maybe a bit too heavy on the normal maps. You can probably just drag it down a little bit so it's not as bumpy, especially how it would relate to the rest of the scene where everything's quite smooth and light and soft. This is just quite thick and bumpy, but it's a great color. Really good placement of books, I would say. Like I do like that you're starting to sort of show a human's mind as how they would place books in this sort of case to make it aesthetic. Think about maybe how you would fill this space here, especially how you would stop this book from falling. And good use of like actual titles and stuff on there. And now the thing that bothered me the most with this is this open book here. So it's got no text on it. Look, the book model as itself is pretty good. I'd be pretty happy with that. But I'm thinking, who's leaving this book open with no text on it, and then has a really like to the point of OCD style, I don't know if that's really the right term, but like that sort of intense organization of their books. Like maybe this is a diary, but they don't have a pen around, so it's just an open wordless book in the middle of the thing. This is something like to consider. And yes, there's the sort of magazine look of people opening up stuff, and it's like it's not real, but it looks like it's lived in. But you can make it look more lived in by having, a little mug and stuff there, because people leave their mugs around and everything too. Maybe adding a little plant on the desk to make it look a bit more full of life and stuff. But yeah, that's just something to consider and look into what people would say about that. Like, and have a think about if you feel comfortable with that, because it does look great. Like, it does fit the scene, but then when you look into it a bit deeper, you're like, I don't know. And this table is modeled really well. I'm really happy with that, especially as well the ground that you've got going on here. I do like the little texture that you've added on the lounge and the floorboard here too. And yeah, that's what I'm going to say about that. I think you've done a really good job. I think you should be proud about the level that you're at the moment. But I would be mostly now looking into lighting first, and then looking into the individual details of each little piece, like adding those creases and looking into the normal maps, looking into the contextual things, and a little bit of composition and stuff too. But because you've already got some skills, it's just now looking at some things you've been overlooking for a little bit. Awesome work, and thanks to everybody else that was in this video. See you all next time, I guess. See ya.